Every nerve and he starts to ignite, drawing power from the dark of the night.
Get ready to discover the story of a billionaire who lives in isolation and can never be touched. What seemed like nothing more than the arrogance of an untouchable man actually hides a secret that Jenny discovered in the most unexpected way. And what she did changed his life forever. This is a story full of emotion and twists, so prepare your heart and stay with us until the end.
Get away from me!
The shout echoed through the elevator. Jenny was so startled that she quickly stepped back, hitting her elbow against the mirrored wall. On the other side, a man was pressed into the corner with wide eyes, gripping the handrail so tightly that his fingertips had turned white. He was wearing a perfect suit, his hair was flawless, and his expression was one of absolute panic that did not match any of it. "I am not even close to you," Jenny said, still not understanding anything. "You touched me," he replied, his voice shaking. "I only touched your finger by accident when I picked up the paper that fell out of your folder. That was all." Jenny held the sheet up in front of him. "I was kind enough to pick it up, and this is how you thank me? By having a meltdown?" "I did not ask you to pick up anything." "Oh, sorry. Next time I will leave it on the floor and step on it. Is that better?" He looked at her coldly. "Miss, you have no idea who you are talking to." Jenny laughed, out of pure disbelief. "And you have no idea how ridiculous you are being right now." Before he could answer, the elevator doors opened, and he walked out without looking back, fast, as if the hallway were an escape route. Jenny was left alone, her heart racing, and the crumpled sheet in her hand. She looked at the paper and saw what was written on it. Financial Report, Almeida Enterprises. And in the corner, in small letters, Anthony Gabriel Almeida, CEO. Her stomach twisted. The crazy man from the elevator was the owner of the company. The same company where she had a job interview in 6 minutes. Oh my God. No. No, no. She leaned her forehead against the elevator wall and closed her eyes. She needed that job. Her rent was overdue. Her credit card was maxed out. And that position was the only response she had gotten after weeks of sending out resumes everywhere. She took a deep breath and pressed the button for the interview floor. If she was going to be humiliated, at least she was going to be humiliated with her head held high. When she walked into the room, Anthony was already behind the desk. With a serious posture, a neutral expression, as if the incident in the elevator had happened on another planet. But Jenny noticed one detail. His hands were hidden under the desk. "Miss Jenny Alves?" "Yes." "Sit down. In that chair over there." The chair he pointed to was ridiculously far away, almost 5 meters from the desk. She thought about asking if he would rather have her sit in the parking lot, but she swallowed the comment and sat down. "Did you read the special clauses in the contract?" "Yes, every line." Clause 7. Minimum distance of 1 meter in any situation. Clause 9. No perfume or products with a strong fragrance. Clause 12. Jenny looked straight at him. Under no circumstance, in any situation, for any reason, touch you. Those words made Anthony's expression change, too quickly for Jenny to understand. It was not coldness, it was something that looked more like relief. The last assistant lasted 4 days. The one before that, 2. The one before those did not even finish lunch on the first day. What did they do wrong? They thought the rules were suggestions. I do not confuse rules with suggestions, especially when my rent depends on this, Jenny said. He stayed quiet for a few seconds. Then he slid a badge across the desk to the nearest edge on her side. Tomorrow, 7 o'clock. Be at my house, and do not be late. Jenny picked up the badge and walked to the door. Her hand was already on the doorknob when he spoke. Miss Alves? She stopped but did not turn around. I am not crazy. Jenny stood still for a second. Then she opened the door and left without answering. In the hallway, she leaned her back against the wall and took a deep breath. Because when Clause 12 came up, she had seen something in his eyes that he was trying to hide behind all that icy armor. It was fear. Real fear. Deep and completely desperate. And Jenny already knew she would not be able to ignore that. The next day, Jenny arrived at Anthony Gabriel Almeida's mansion.
Wow.
That mansion was not a house. It was a living system, designed to keep the world at a distance. Jenny realized that within the first few minutes after entering the house, when a beep sounded somewhere. Proximity sensor, said a voice behind her. Jenny turned around. A thin man with glasses was watching her with a clipboard in his hands. I am Bento, Mr. Almeida's butler. You must be the new assistant. Yes, my name is Jenny. Very well, Miss Jenny. Before anything else, I need to show you how this house works. The tour lasted 20 minutes, and with each room, Jenny understood a little more about the size of it all. The mansion was beautiful, but there was something strange about it. Something cold. Every space was divided by invisible zones, lines on the floor that Bento pointed out naturally, as if that were the most normal thing in the world. Mr. Almeida moves here, only staff there. Documents go through the transfer tray. Personal items never cross paths. And all meetings happen through a screen. Jenny listened to everything without interrupting, but when Bento finished and left her alone in the office that would be her workspace, she stood still for a moment, looking at the silver tray that sat between her side and Anthony's side. The first few hours of work passed without surprises. Anthony worked silently on the other side of the office, and between them, there was only the sound of keyboards. At no point did he try to start a conversation, and she did not push it. But in the middle of the afternoon, while leaving a report on the transfer tray, Jenny placed a folded piece of paper beside it, handwritten, unsigned. Your 3 p.m. coffee should be espresso, not drip. Drip is for people who have already given up on life. Anthony read it and said nothing. And in the days that followed, the notes kept appearing, always with that tone of someone poking danger, just to see the reaction. Anthony never answered out loud, but Jenny noticed the reactions. An eyebrow lifting, a sigh a little longer than usual. Their routine was forming that way, until on Friday, Bento appeared at the office door, looking like he had swallowed a lemon. Mr. Almeida, the dinner with the investors. It's today. Anthony looked up from the screen. I know it's today. Are you sure you do not want to cancel? I can call and say you have a migraine, or the flu, or chicken pox. Bento. Food poisoning is better? Bento, the dinner is happening. Very well, sir. I will confirm your attendance. Later, 3 investors and Richard Calloway, Anthony's biggest rival in the tech industry, were seated at the mansion's dinner table. The conversation flowed well, with numbers, projections, deals, everything under control. Jenny served as the logistical bridge, bringing documents, taking notes, keeping everything organized so no one needed to get up. Until dessert arrived, and Calloway raised his glass with a smile and proposed a toast. To the partnership, he said, extending his free hand toward the center of the table. Holding hands, like in the old days. The other two investors laughed, and all eyes turned to Anthony. Anthony stayed frozen, as if someone had unplugged him. And Jenny saw the exact moment when disaster was about to happen. "Richard, no!" Jenny whispered, leaning toward Richard. "What is it? Did something happen?" Richard pulled his hand back as if he had touched a hot coal. "His hand." Jenny lowered her voice into a tone of shared secrecy, glancing around as if she were revealing a state secret. "Anthony got a tattoo yesterday, right on the palm of his right hand. It's still sensitive." Richard's eyes widened, shifting his gaze between Anthony's icy face and his closed hand. "A tattoo? Anthony?" Richard whispered back, fascinated. "But what would he even get tattooed there?" "It is something personal, very personal." Jenny let out a dramatic sigh, shaking her head. "You know how it is, a moment of impulse, something very intimate. He does not like to talk about it, but the tattoo artist was very clear. No physical contact for 48 hours, or the ink will smear and ruin the design. And it cost a fortune, Richard." Anthony was looking at Jenny with an expression that, if it could, would have turned her into ashes right there. "Oh, I understand completely." Richard pulled his hand back as if he had almost touched a wet masterpiece at the Louvre. "I apologize, Anthony. I would never want to ruin your sentimental investment. The skin must be so sensitive, right?" "Sensitive does not even begin to cover it." "He is being a warrior by not complaining about the burning," Jenny added. "Cheers, Richard," Jenny said, raising her glass with a calm smile. "To art and to intimate mysteries," Richard repeated, completely convinced, casting a curious glance at Anthony's closed hand. The dinner continued in an atmosphere of suspense. Richard spent the whole time trying to tilt his head at impossible angles to see if he could catch a glimpse of ink on Anthony's hand, while Anthony kept his right hand hidden as if it held the greatest secret in the world. When the guests left, Anthony looked at Jenny and said in a voice full of cold sarcasm, "An intimate tattoo, Miss Alves? A sentimental investment?" "But it worked. Richard now thinks you are a man of deep layers and burning secrets." He left here completely impressed. "Richard spent the whole night looking at me as if I had the name of a gang or a heart with something strange written on the palm of my hand." Anthony took a step toward her, the embarrassment still burning in his cheeks. "A tattoo? Really? What exactly would I have tattooed on the palm of my hand?" Jenny gave a slight sideways smile, putting away her notepad as naturally as if nothing had happened. "I don't know, Mr. Anthony, but from the way Richard looked at you during dessert, he would probably bet on the name of a very famous and powerful girlfriend, or the company logo, if your loyalty has reached pathological levels." Anthony stared at her, speechless. Her boldness was still something he did not know how to process. "Good night, Miss Alves," he said, with a stiffness that was almost comical. "Good night, Mr. Anthony. Sleep well." Jenny only waited for him to leave before finally letting her smile show for real. In the kitchen doorway, Ben was watching everything. In 11 years working in that mansion, he had never seen Anthony stand there listening to anyone's lies for that long, much less let her have the last word. A week had gone by. The routine remained precise, almost mechanical. But that morning, Anthony got up and walked to the transfer tray with a thick folder under his arm and an expression Jenny had not seen on him before. He placed the folder on the tray and said, "Jenny, I need your help with a project that is not on the official schedule. Jenny opened the folder and looked at the documents. They were architectural plans, construction budgets, an entire care institute, with no mention of Almeida Enterprises anywhere. Is it anonymous? Completely. Okay, she closed the folder and started working without asking any more questions. Anthony stood there, as if waiting for some reaction, and when he realized none was coming, he went back to his desk in silence. Later, Anthony asked Jenny to organize the physical files for the project, which were scattered in folders inside an old cabinet in the corner of the office. She spent much of the morning cataloging everything, opening drawer after drawer until she reached the last one. Inside were project folders, just as expected, but at the bottom of the drawer, hidden underneath everything, there was something that was not part of the project. It was a photograph torn in half, and the remaining half showed the crushed front of a car, and in the lower corner of the image, the hand of a child. Attached to the photo with a paperclip, there was a hospital record dated 23 years earlier. Jenny looked at it for a moment, but then she put everything back exactly as it had been and returned to her desk as if nothing had happened. She knew it was not the time to ask questions, but she was not going to forget what she had seen. On Thursday, Anthony went to the land where the Care Institute would be built, and Jenny went with him, carrying the tablet and the plans under her arm. And suddenly it started to rain. Anthony opened the umbrella by instinct, while Jenny stood still for a second, looking up at the sky, as if it had done that on purpose against her. Then she lowered her head and kept walking in the rain. That was when she felt a tug. It was light at the edge of her blouse, and it came with such gentleness that she almost did not notice. 2 fingers holding the fabric with as little contact as possible and pulling her under the umbrella, without a word. The 2 of them stood there, close to each other. Anthony kept looking at the horizon with an interest that convinced no one he was tense. And Jenny slowly lifted her face, and her eyes drifted to his mouth, and suddenly there was less space between them than there should have been. The world seemed to stop for a moment. The rain fell around the umbrella, while they remained there, wrapped in silence. Anthony stepped back, quickly and without explanation. "I'm sorry," Jenny said automatically, before she even really understood why she was apologizing. But he was already walking back to the car. Back at the mansion, Anthony went straight upstairs to his bedroom without saying a word, and Jenny went to the office to finish a report that could not wait until the next day. She stayed there for almost an hour, just her and the sound of the rain outside, until the document was done and she started putting everything away to leave. That was when she heard it. A scream coming from upstairs. Jenny stood still for a second, waiting for another sound. Nothing. Only silence again. She went up the stairs. In the upstairs hallway, there was a half-open door with a thin line of light coming from underneath, and Jenny stopped outside without pushing it. Through the crack in the door, she could see enough. Anthony was lying on his side with his face tense, even in sleep, as if rest was something his body tolerated, but his mind refused. And in his hands, resting on the dark sheet, there was a pair of fine silk gloves. Jenny went downstairs in silence, picked up her bag, and walked out the front door. She got into the car, but stayed still for a moment before starting the engine. The torn photo, the child's hand, the hospital record, the gloves. Something had happened to Anthony 23 years ago, and she was beginning to understand that it had still not been forgotten. Jenny spent the night thinking about Anthony sleeping in gloves, and what could have happened to make him that way. The next day, the silence in the mansion seemed heavier, weighed down by the memory of the almost kiss in the rain. Anthony looked paler, and the dark circles under his eyes showed that rest did not come easily to him. "Are you okay?" Jenny asked as she handed over a report on the tray. Anthony hesitated. He looked at his own hidden hands and then at her, without his usual arrogance. "Loneliness is a habit, Jenny. Sometimes the body forgets how to behave near another human being. I have never had relationships. There was never anyone," he replied. Jenny paused for a moment, surprised by that confession coming from a cold man with so much power. "None? Not even a kiss, Anthony?" His name came out softly for the first time. "Never," he confessed. "The world is a minefield for me. Every close moment is a thread of pain." The moment was interrupted by the beep of the computer. The trip to Milan had been moved up at the last minute. Anthony needed to appear at the event to reassure the shareholders, but his formal suit still needed adjustments, and since he had dismissed the tailor earlier, there was no one left to help. At that moment, Anthony's cold side came back in full force. "Jenny, get me a tailor urgently to adjust my suit. And get ready. You are coming with me to Milan today. I want everything to be perfect." "But sir, so suddenly? It will be hard to find someone available right now," she replied, worried. "Just make it happen. Or would you rather I go to Italy wearing clothes that look bigger than I am?" "Sir, I can try to fix it myself. I used to sew when I was a child, and I even made my own clothes. My grandmother taught me everything." The next scene, inside that giant closet, was almost unbelievable. Jenny was holding long tweezers and metal hooks that looked more like surgical instruments. "Stand still," Jenny instructed, trying to keep her voice steady despite her nerves. "If I touch your skin, you fire me. But if I do not close these buttons, you will embarrass yourself in Italy." With perfect precision, she used the tweezers to pull the shirt fabric and the hooks to fasten the mother-of-pearl buttons. The closeness between them was unbearable. She could feel the heat coming from his body and the woody scent mixed with the tension of the moment. Anthony did not move, and he was very tense. "Done, sir," she said, stepping back to look at the result. "It actually looks very elegant." "You are good with these tools," he said, with a slight smile on his face. Jenny crossed her arms, trying to look calm. "It is a matter of survival, Anthony. I learned early that to deal with demanding bosses, you need to know how to do a little of everything." Hours later, Anthony and Jenny were already in Milan. The ballroom at the Palazzo Reale was full of elegant people. Anthony walked stiffly, clearly uncomfortable with the crowd, trying with all his strength not to touch anyone. Jenny was right behind him, keeping a safe distance, but watching closely for any sign that he might need her. It was in that tense atmosphere that everything happened, in the blink of an eye. A loud electrical crack echoed through the hall, and out of nowhere, the lights went out, leaving everything in total darkness. The music stopped, the air conditioning shut off, and the silence lasted only 1 second before chaos began. Everyone panicked, and unable to see anything, the crowd started pushing desperately, trying to get out. "Anthony, where are you?" Jenny shouted as loud as she could, but her voice disappeared in the middle of the screaming. In the dark, she could feel people crashing into her hard. Just ahead, she managed to see Anthony stumbling. His panic was obvious. He was being touched by unknown hands and shoulders slamming into him. To anyone else there, it was just normal pushing in a crowd. But for Anthony, that physical contact was terrifying, as if they were suffocating him. Unable to handle the pressure, he dropped to his knees and covered his head with his hands, trying to hide. Jenny did not think twice. She pushed through the crowd, using her elbows to make a path until she reached him. Quickly, she stood with her back to Anthony and opened her arms, becoming a shield to make sure no one else touched him in that darkness. "Breathe. Stay calm. No one is going to touch you. It's me, Jenny," she kept telling him, feeling his desperation behind her. As soon as the security team managed to clear the ballroom, Jenny got Anthony out of there as fast as she could. A short time later, when they entered the hotel suite, Anthony threw himself onto the couch, completely exhausted. Sweat ran down his face, and he was breathing so hard it looked like he had run for miles without stopping. "Hapaphobia," he said with deep sadness. "That is the name of my prison." Jenny sat on the floor at a safe distance, watching him fall apart.
"Since I was 7 years old. The car accident, my mother." He closed his eyes. "I saw her hand. I tried to hold it, but I froze. Touch became the same as despair. My brain understands any contact as a burn. It hurts, Jenny. It really hurts." Jenny felt her chest tighten and tried to hold back her tears. She understood that Anthony's luxury was only a padded prison, and that the man in front of her was not arrogant, but a wounded man. After they returned from Milan, the atmosphere in the mansion was no longer the same. Anthony seemed to have left part of his icy armor in Italy, and Jenny felt that the barrier between them was starting to give way. 3 days after that conversation at the hotel, they were in the office, and on top of the desk there was a pair of leather gloves, the thick kind motorcyclists wear. "Anthony, if the problem is what you feel when you touch someone, let's try to trick your brain," Jenny explained, calmly putting on the left glove. Anthony hesitated for a second, but then he picked up the right glove and put it on. He was still visibly tense. He looked at Jenny, and she noticed it right away. There was fear there, almost childlike, but also a courage she had never seen in him before. Jenny carefully held out her hand. When her gloved hand touched his, Anthony squeezed his eyes shut and clenched his teeth, as if he were preparing for pain. But he did not pull away. On the contrary, he squeezed her hand back, tightly. "It doesn't hurt," he said softly, his voice unsteady. "Jenny, I feel the pressure, but that burning is not there anymore." They stayed like that for a while, just holding each other's hand. For the first time in years, it did not seem impossible. What neither of them knew was that up on the ceiling, hidden in one of the corners, a tiny camera was recording everything. The next morning, Anthony was in the office when his brother, Marcus, walked in without knocking. He was not alone. He came in with 2 lawyers and a cynical smile that made Jenny's stomach turn. "The little show is over, Anthony," Marcus said, throwing a tablet onto the desk. The images showed the 2 of them in the library. From the camera angle and without the sound of their voices, the scene looked strange. Anthony seemed fragile, out of control, while Jenny was holding his hand in a way that looked manipulative. "You are a sick man, and this woman is nothing but an opportunist," Marcus continued. "I have already gone to court to have you declared incompetent. You are in no condition to take care of the Almeida family assets if you cannot even shake an employee's hand without getting sick." Jenny tried to speak, but Marcus cut her off immediately. He signaled toward the door, and 2 police officers walked in with official papers in their hands. "Jenny Silva?" the officer asked. "We have a court order. You must leave now and stay 500 meters away from Mr. Anthony.
If you attempt contact, you will be arrested for abuse of an incapacitated person. The shock was so great that Jenny lost her voice. She looked at Anthony, waiting for him to react, to shout, to make his power count. But he was frozen, his eyes fixed on the screen, reliving all the trauma of being exposed that way. Anthony, react! Say something! Jenny begged, while an officer grabbed her by the arm to take her out. Get out of my brother's house! Marcus shouted. Jenny was taken to the gate under the cold stares of the security guards. She spent the next 2 days locked inside her apartment, glued to the news. Anthony's name was in every newspaper. Marcus had taken control of everything, spreading the story that his brother was under medical care. On the 3rd day, Bento, the butler, knocked on her door. He looked like he had aged 10 years in 3 days. He is not eating anything, Miss Jenny. He is locked in his room, in the dark. Marcus fired half the staff and brought in new security guards. He is going to destroy the boss. But I cannot go near him, Bento. The police will arrest me if I go there, Jenny said. Marcus lied to everyone, Bento said, handing her an old folder. I went through the files he tried to burn. On the day of the accident, Marcus was in the car too, but no one ever knew. He was older, he knew the brakes were bad, and he did not warn his father. He fed Anthony's guilt all these years just to keep him like this, destroyed. The hatred Jenny felt turned into strength. She grabbed the tablet and opened the mansion's floor plan. Did Marcus turn on the alarms? She asked. All of them. If a cat walks through the garden, the police station will know. Then we are going to need a plan to distract them. That night, Jenny returned to the mansion. Bento turned off the outside lights for only 10 seconds, just enough time for her to jump over the side wall. As soon as she stepped into the garden, the system glitched and started rebooting. Jenny ran like never before. The red lights from the sensors swept across the garden. She hid behind a statue when a guard passed nearby. Her heart was pounding fast. She was no longer the assistant. Now, she was an intruder. When she reached the back door, the alarm went off and echoed through the whole neighborhood. Damn it! She shouted, forcing the door that Bento had left slightly open. Jenny rushed into the hallway. She could hear the footsteps of the guards coming right behind her, but she did not stop. She ran up the stairs, already out of breath. Her body was begging her to stop, but she ignored it. She had to get to Anthony's room before the police arrived. When Jenny reached the bedroom door, she did not think twice. She kicked it with all her strength, and the door flew open at once. Inside, the air was heavy and dark. Anthony was curled up on the floor in a corner of the room, with his knees pressed to his chest. He looked like he could not see or hear anything, lost in a state of shock Jenny had never seen before. Anthony, it's me! Wake up! We need to get out, now! She shouted, running toward him. Before he could react, Marcus appeared at the door. The butler Bento tried to hold him back, but Marcus, in a fit of rage, shoved Bento against a table. As he fell, Bento knocked over an old lamp that short-circuited immediately. Sparks flew onto the curtains, and within seconds, the fire climbed up the fabric. The smell of smoke filled everything. "Look what you did!" Marcus shouted, terrified as he saw the flames spreading. A coward, he turned his back and ran away, leaving everyone behind. The fire rose fast, and black smoke began to spread through the room. Jenny tried to get to Anthony, but before she could, the wardrobe fell right in front of her, completely blocking her way. "Anthony!" Jenny shouted, already coughing because of the smoke. "I'm trapped! Help me, please!" It was her scream that brought Anthony back. He looked at the flames and saw the fear on the face of the only person who truly cared about him. Sweat was running down his forehead, but his body would not respond. In his mind, touching someone still meant pain. He looked at his own hands, shaking. If he touched her, he knew what would come. If he did not touch her, she would not get out of there. Anthony took a deep breath and moved. He stepped into the smoke. No gloves, nothing to protect himself. He grabbed Jenny's arm with all his strength. He closed his eyes, waiting for the shock of pain. But it did not come. There was only the warmth of her skin and the urgency to get her out of there. Without letting go, he forced the wardrobe, opening enough space to get through, and managed to free her. Then he pulled her close, held her in his arms, and crossed the burning hallway until he reached the service stairs that Bento had kept open. Hours later, at the hospital, the silence was broken only by the beeping of the machines. Anthony was sitting on the edge of the bed, his eyes fixed on his own hands, still unable to believe it. There were no blisters, no marks, and most importantly, there was none of that pain that had followed him all his life. Jenny was in the bed beside him, safe and sound. "It did not hurt, Jenny," he said, his voice breaking, almost in a whisper. For the first time in my life, touch did not bring suffering. It brought peace. When I held you, it felt like I was protecting my whole world in my arms. At that moment, the doctor walked into the room, looked at the test results, and gave the news right away. "Mr. Anthony, based on our tests and what happened, you are cured of haphophobia." Anthony froze. He looked at the doctor with wide eyes, his heart racing in his chest. "What do you mean, cured?" he asked, his voice rising, mixing joy with the desperation of someone who does not understand what he is hearing. "I touched her. I held her arm with all my strength in the middle of that fire, and I did not feel anything. It did not burn, it did not sting, it did not hurt at all, doctor." The doctor smiled slightly and explained. "It was the surge of adrenaline and the strong emotion of saving her life. Your brain gave priority to survival and ended up resetting the trauma." Anthony's joy was so great that he could barely stand still. He saw Bento walking into the room and, on impulse, pulled the butler by the arm into the hallway, away from Jenny's ears. "Bento, did you hear that?" he said, almost out of breath. "That means I can kiss now, Bento. I can finally kiss Jenny." But in the very next second, his smile disappeared and gave way to a look of pure panic. His hands started shaking, and he looked around, not knowing what to do. "But now what?" he cried out, desperate. "How do I do it, Bento? I'm 30 years old, and I do not know how to kiss. I've never touched my mouth to anyone. I'm going to look like a fool. I'm going to ruin everything." Bento, with the calm of someone who had already seen everything in life, placed a hand on his employer's shoulder to settle him down. He picked up a grape and a plum from the basket he had brought for Jenny. "Easy, Mr. Anthony. Breathe. Kissing is like a contract. You do not sign it without reading the fine print first." "Fine print?" Anthony asked, wiping the sweat from his forehead. "Here's the thing. Imagine this plum is your lips, and the grape is hers. You bring your lips close to hers very slowly, like you are testing whether a very expensive coffee is too hot. If you rush in too hard, it will look like you are trying to bite the poor girl. No rushing." "Expensive coffee. I understand. And the rest?" "And the tongue is like seasoning, boss. You have to use it wisely, like someone getting the salt right in a risotto. If you use too much, you ruin the dish. If you use none at all, it is bland, with no taste at all." Anthony stood there, staring at the grape and the plum in Bento's hand, trying to memorize every detail of those instructions. The fire had taken his house. But now he had something far more valuable: the chance to learn how to love like everyone else. Anthony was discharged from the hospital with the press present, but the Almeida mansion was not at peace. Marcus was being investigated, and the company's board was already trying to protect its own interests. As soon as Anthony stepped into the living room, he came face to face with Helena. The daughter of one of the biggest shareholders, she held a glass of wine with a graceful but forced manner. "It is good to see that you finally got past this problem, Anthony," she said, stepping closer with a confident smile. Before he could react, Helena hugged him. Jenny, who was coming right behind with the tablet, stopped at once. Anthony went stiff for a moment, but he did not pull Helena away right away. That was enough. It hurt Jenny. Now he could touch anyone. He did not need her anymore. Maybe, to him, everything they had lived through had not been that important. She took a deep breath. Without saying a word, she turned and walked out through the back door. She left her badge on Bento's table and went away. Inside, Anthony finally pulled Helena away. "What do you think you are doing?" he asked, serious. "What needs to be done?" she answered, calm. "My father and the board think a marriage between us will bring security to the company. We need to show stability." Anthony let out a short laugh. "You are talking about marriage as if it were business." He took a step back. "Helena, that is not going to happen." Without waiting for a response, he turned and went straight to the office. But there he found only Jenny's badge. At that moment, he felt a tightness in his chest. "Bento, where is she?" Anthony said when he saw Bento in the hallway. "She left through the back, sir." She looked very shaken. Anthony did not think twice. He grabbed the keys and left. He drove fast to Jenny's apartment. When he got there, he knocked on the door. Nothing. He knocked again. A neighbor next door opened her door just a little. "She is not there anymore. She left a little while ago, with 2 suitcases. It looked like she was traveling." "Where to?" he asked, distressed. "She did not say, but I heard something about the airport with the taxi." Anthony went back to the car and drove straight to the airport. He parked carelessly and ran inside. He looked everywhere, searching, until he saw her, Jenny, near the boarding gate. "Jenny, wait!" he shouted. She stopped and slowly turned around. Her eyes were red. Anthony ran to her. "What are you doing here, Anthony?" she said. "Go be with Helena. That is what you need now." "Are you serious?" he answered. "I do not want Helena. I do not want anyone but you." "I saw you hugging," Jenny said. "Now you can touch anyone. Why would you stay with me?" Anthony stepped closer. "Because you stayed when no one else did." He spoke more softly. "I feel nothing when Helena hugs me, but I feel everything when I look at you. My world only makes sense if you are in it." Jenny fell silent. Anthony did not wait any longer. He pulled her by the waist and kissed her. And Jenny dropped her carry-on bag and kissed him back right away, holding his face. Anthony even tried to remember what Bento had said, but forgot everything. He only did what he felt, and for the first time, he was not afraid. "You are going to leave without telling me anything?" he whispered against her lips. "I thought I meant nothing to you," she replied. "You mean everything to me, Jenny." Days later, Anthony called the press. In the crowded room, he told the truth about Marcus and said he was going to help hospitals and research about problems like the one he had. He wanted other people to also have a chance to be cured. Months later, Anthony and Jenny were walking along a deserted beach. He was not wearing shoes, gloves, or a suit. He was holding Jenny's hand tightly, feeling every detail of her skin. "No gloves today?" she teased. "Never again," he replied. They walked slowly, enjoying every second of contact. Love overcame the barrier of touch, and they were together forever with the love they felt for each other. Many times, the healing we seek is not in medicine, but in the care of the person who stays by our side when the world falls apart. If you believe that true love has the power to transform lives, write "Love Heals" in the comments and share this video with someone special. And subscribe to the channel to see more stories like this.
Every nerve and he starts to ignite, drawing power from the dark of the night. The atmosphere is heavy, thick and sweet, where the edge of the sky and the shoreline meet. It's a surge, a sudden rush through my veins, breaking the locks and the heavy iron chains. When our lips collide, the cloud loses its gears. 1,000 volts washing away all the years. The universe contracts into the single spark, a flare of brilliance cutting through the dark. Time is suspended, frozen in the glow of a current only you and I can know. I can feel the pulse beneath your skin, a sacred frequency where we begin. We're the only movement in a world of storm, a kingdom built for the two of us alone. No horizon left to find, leaving the physical world behind. No gravity can hold us down. In the silence, we are profound. A white hot bridge between two souls, finally making the broken pieces whole. Hold a moment, don't let it slip. In the sanctuary of your grip, it's a surge, a sudden rush through my veins, breaking the locks and the heavy iron chains. When our lips collide, the clock loses its gears. 1,000 volts washing away all the years. The universe contracts into this single